This is Sales Players, and I'm your host, Jesse Woodbury. I've spent my career selling for early stage companies, and now I'm on a mission to help reps and operators find tips, strategies, and resources for generating more pipeline, closing more deals, and building wealth in tech sales. To learn more, visit salesplayers.co. All right, we're live. What's up, Sales Players? It's Jesse here, and I'm recording this episode on a Friday evening. And I thought, since it's Friday evening, let's have some fun with today's topic. And lately, I've been getting a bunch of questions from the community about how I manage my schedule and how I'm able to juggle everything that I do. I'm an enterprise account executive for an early stage AI SaaS startup by day. That involves building pipeline and closing strategic deals, among many other things. Working in a startup is already a very busy job. And then outside of that, I own Sales Players, which is a cash flowing side hustle that did 5 figures for me last year. And what that entails is creating podcast episodes like this one. Every week I send out a newsletter on Sunday mornings, recapping things that are top of mind for me. I post on social as often as I can. And then I also run a one-on-one coaching arm of the business where I work with folks like yourself who want to level up in their tech selling career and land their next big opportunity in tech sales. And so as you can imagine, I keep pretty busy just with the work stuff. Then I have 2 school-aged kids and a spouse. I participate in multiple hobbies. And then over the last 6 months, I've been very focused on fitness and nutrition. So I'm always trying to work in some exercise and meal prep and those sorts of things, which can be very time consuming. So I thought it'd be a great idea to put together an episode that walks through what a week in my life looks like, just to hear some of the things that I've done to also design this lifestyle, because this was 100% intentional. And really where this all started for me was many years ago. I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, and it completely rewired my thinking on the life I want to live and the career I want to have. And so I have carefully designed this lifestyle over the last several years. So let's get into it. A typical day for me starts at actually around 7 a.m. I don't wake up as early as a lot of people think. At different points in my career, I was waking up much earlier, especially at one point when I was working on some deals that were overseas in Europe. I was up as early as 4:30 or 5 a.m. in some cases. But lately I've been getting up at around 7 a.m. That's when the alarm clock goes off. And that's when I've got to get the kids up and out the door for school. My wife and I both work on that together. I usually go try to do a workout first thing in the morning. And lately what I do is kettlebells. The weather's really nice right now. A few years ago, I invested in a bunch of kettlebells, and I've found those to be a very quick and effective way to get a workout in because you're doing both strength training and cardio at the same time. And usually 20 or 30 minutes of kettlebell exercises is plenty enough to feel like you've gotten a good workout in. Lots of times I go on a run. I try to run 2.5 to 3 miles a few times a week. And we also have a gym membership. Our gym's just right around the corner. And I'll go and get a 30 or 40 minute weightlifting session in where I lift heavy weights. So I try to do that a few times a week as well. And I kind of mix and match, just depends on what I'm in the mood for that day. I always try to have some protein right in the mornings. This is part of my nutrition regimen, trying to start the day with at least 30 grams of protein at breakfast. Last year, that was really hard. I was trying to make this big breakfast bowl with eggs and sausage and avocado. But lately, I've just switched to doing protein shakes, and that's a lot faster and easier to get going in the morning. Then next, I go and make myself a double espresso. And one of the investments that we made a few years ago that's really paying off is in our espresso machine. We bought one of those Breville, however you pronounce it, super fancy espresso machines. It was about $1,000, but it's an investment that definitely paid for itself because we were going out and getting coffee from the local shop every single day, and that started to get really expensive. Now I've learned the whole art form behind making the perfect cup of double espresso. And so I'll start usually in the winter seasons, I'll do that hot. And then in the summer months here in Arizona, we'll switch to cold brew, and we actually make our own cold brew as well. That's even faster to just throw a cup of cold brew together because all I got to do is add ice and maybe some milk and we're good to go. So then I typically get to my desk as quickly as I can. Sometimes that's as early as 7:30. That's usually when the kids are gone. And I can go sit down with my double espresso and get started for the day. I always start on my day job. I don't ever work on podcast or coaching or side business stuff until much later in the day. And honestly, I do most things around the podcast in the late evenings or over the weekends. So the first thing that I try to tackle every single day as an enterprise account executive is I review my current active opportunities. This is a habit that I developed back in 2013 when I had a manager say, you should start your day looking at your current ops and asking yourself what it's going to take to move them to the next stage in the pipeline. So I've made that a ritual for myself where I go in, review my opportunities, think through how to move those along in the funnel, follow up with the folks at those opportunities as needed, and then I can focus on other things. Typically from there, I'll either have meetings, whether that's a discovery or demo call or a pricing proposal call, and then some internal meetings tend to happen kind of midday, and then I'll try to work in prospecting blocks throughout the course of the week. I try to spend at least an hour a day doing prospecting. Lately, it's been a lot more than that. I've had more free time to do cold calls and outbound emails. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn crafting personalized messages to my prospects. And so I'll spend at least an hour a day doing some sort of outreach to my book of business. And then between that, there's always, small tasks and follow-up calls and things like that need to get done. And I'll stack those up in the later part of the afternoon. Then as the afternoon goes on, I tend to shift gears towards the podcast. Typically closer to the end of the day, I'll produce content like this. I used to be able to do podcast episodes in the morning, and it's probably the best time to create content. But due to my schedule, I've found that right now, the only time I can get to it is later in the day, typically around 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's why I'm doing this one on a Friday evening. It's about 5:45 right now. So that tends to be sort of the routine. And I'm trying to put out 2 to 3 episodes of the podcast every single week. Podcasting is a consistency game. You have to stay consistent. Otherwise, the algorithms will penalize you and folks won't come back to listen to your show. I've known that since the beginning, and I've tried to stick to that routine very well. And something about me is I'm very habitual. I am a big fan of being on a routine. I've always been able to stay very consistent with things like exercise, podcasting, prospecting, and follow-ups and those sorts of things. A few times a week, I'll have coaching calls with clients, and I try to work those into the day somewhere. One of the hardest things about running a side hustle, in addition to already having a very busy day job, is something called context switching, which honestly, I'm still learning how to do. It's very difficult to shift gears from creating a podcast episode to then jumping on a product demo for my day job, to then jumping back to a one-on-one with my boss, to then jumping to writing a social post on LinkedIn. So I really have to try to optimize my days so that I'm not having to context switch too much during the day. Otherwise, you can get burned out really quickly. So something to consider if you're out there listening and you're thinking about starting a side hustle or you're trying to do a bunch of things during the day, context switching can be a killer. So you want to try to stack your activities and separate those in a way that you can just switch context one time. Let's see. Some other things that I get up to during the week is I always try to have planning sessions, especially on Monday mornings and Friday afternoons. That's when I bake my planning into my schedule. That's planning for next week's content. That's also planning all my meetings for my day job over the course of the next couple weeks. It's making sure that I have a good strategy for outbound and prospecting. And so I'll actually block time on my calendar specifically for planning. Now, something I want to talk about is calendar blocking. Hopefully you know what that is. I won't go into too much detail on how to do it. Years ago, I learned from Morgan Ingram the color-coded calendar. Ooh, that was a mouthful. And so I'll put things where I'm completely away and blocked in red. Anything for me that's a revenue-generating activity, I put in green on my calendar. Internal stuff tends to be either yellow or blue, depending on how critical it is. And that's pretty much it. It's nothing super formal, but it is a system that I have to make sure that I know where to prioritize and what things can be moved around if needed, because sometimes you've got to be flexible to accommodate a prospect or a coaching client or something like that. So then from there, pretty standard evening routine for us. We sit down as a family for dinner, get the kids' homework done, and then get them off to bed. And then usually I just am pretty much done for the day. I do sometimes come back and work on sales player stuff in the late evenings. Last year, I was working on podcast stuff until late in the night, so I decided to scale that back this year, and I try to wrap up by 7 o'clock or so every evening and just be fully done. Now, in addition to fitness during the day, I also have a few hobbies that I get up to. Most of my hobbies get pushed to the weekend, but I recently invested in an drum kit, an electric drum set, and I've been spending a few minutes every day learning to play the drums. I actually just started on that journey and it's been awesome. It's a really great way to break up calls and activities is to just go smash on the drums for a few minutes. And that's a perfect investment. And as you're thinking about things you can invest in that will help you with your mental health and help you get clarity in your day-to-day, I can say definitively that an e-drum kit is a very good investment. It was quite expensive, but I use it every single day and sometimes multiple times a day. And it's a really great way to decompress. Before I had the drum kit, I'm also a guitar player. Sometimes I would plug in the electric guitars and jam for a little bit. I also mountain bike. I don't do this as much during the week, but at different points in my career, when I'm at number, when I don't have a busy schedule, I would go out and get a bike ride in sometime in the early morning or even in the middle of the day, depending on the weather. So let's shift gears now and talk a little bit about some of the things that you can do to start to formulate a lifestyle of flexibility and freedom and building wealth in tech sales, which is what this podcast is all about. One of the things that I did back in 2020 that was a huge game changer was retiring my wife from her career. Now she is contemplating going back and getting a new role this year, but it's been a major benefit to have a spouse home focused on our household operations because it's allowed me the creative space and flexibility to focus fully on delivering in my day job and producing this content you're listening to right now. Another thing that's a big game changer, and I know I just put an episode out about how you shouldn't work from home early in your career, but I'll say that once you're at a certain point in your career, usually 5 to 7 years in, you should definitely aim for a work from home remote setup. It will be a game changer if you are someone who wants to craft the perfect lifestyle. It's a really awesome thing when you can close 6-figure deals wearing your gym shorts, right? And that is a privilege. I realize a privilege. And it's also allowed for us to relocate to a lower cost of living area, which has helped us invest more, save more on a monthly basis, and put money towards goals and ambitions that we have. Because we're not spending most of our money on mortgage or rent, we're able to put more away into the marketplace and into our savings account, which has also allowed us to take part in some hobbies like some international trips we took. About a year and a half ago, we took our kids to Europe. And then a year ago, we took the kids to Costa Rica. And actually, as I'm recording this episode, my wife is on a 10-day trip to Thailand and Singapore. So I'm actually at home doing the full-time dad duty, as well as all these other things that I'm talking about with my day job and this podcast and everything else. So I already talked about calendar blocking. It's really important to manage your calendar. By the way, I use Calendly. This is not a promotional piece here. I just genuinely love Calendly. It's a great way to sync all of your calendars. So I've got my day job, my podcast email, and then even my personal family email. So I can manage my time very efficiently and use that to do bookings for my coaching sessions. I don't use it for my day job, but I wish I could, but I do use it to coordinate personal activities and things like that as well. The last thing is you're gonna have to put some cycles in on the weekends. I commit my Saturday mornings and sometimes my Sunday mornings as well to doing work on sales players because there's simply not enough hours in the week to have a full-time account executive job and build a 5-figure side hustle. That's just the way it is. And that's okay because for me, I'm a big believer in work-life integration. And besides, sales players is something I enjoy doing. I have a lot of fun with it. It's another one of my hobbies. It just happens to be a hobby that produces cash every single month, which is awesome. So here's some other things I've invested in that have helped me free up more bandwidth. We hired full-time house cleaners. So they come a few times a month and deep clean our house. What that means is I don't have to spend my weekends mopping floors and scrubbing toilets. I have someone else do that. My personal take on this, and I heard this years ago, is that if you make more than $10,000 a month, you absolutely should hire out all of your cleaning in your house. We're super happy with the service that we use. They treat their employees very well and they pay them very well, which is win-win for us because we get our house to be spotless a few times a month, and they've always been super great to work with. Some other things that we've invested in the past, not so much anymore, but we've hired out some of the cooking and meal prep for our household. We tend to like to cook. It's something that I'd add to my hobbies list. My wife and I enjoy cooking together. It's a way that we spend time together. But in the past, sometimes when we were both really busy, we might hire out meal prep to simplify the dinner time routine for our family. grocery delivery. Sometimes going to the grocery store can be really time consuming. And so if you have the means, and I know it's really hard in 2025 because the cost of groceries has gone up so much, which means that your Instacart fee also goes up with that. What you don't want to do is spend too much time shopping when you can have someone else do that for you and deliver your groceries right to your doorstep. Now, something I'm looking into next is a laundry service. We don't have that here locally, but I've got some colleagues that use an outsourced laundry service that comes and picks up their dirty clothes every week, washes them and folds them and brings them back. That would be a huge thing for us if we could find a service here locally that does that. But if you have access to something like that, I highly recommend it because laundry can be a huge time suck. Some other things we've invested in are landscaping services. The last thing I want to do on a Saturday is pull weeds or mow the lawn. So we've also outsourced our landscaping. So that's pretty much it. As you can hear, a lot of it comes down to being disciplined with your time, getting very well organized, spending some time planning, but being intentional about designing the lifestyle that you want and being able to work the things into your schedule that are going to move the needle the most for you. Again, everything that we've designed here is fully intentional. And we've been through periods, my wife and I, where we were both working and commuting and it was super busy. And it would have been impossible to do things like launch a podcast or write a weekly newsletter during that phase of our life. But now we've worked slowly and surely towards building the financial security, moving to a lower cost area, keeping our costs contained so that we're able to have the flexibility to take more risks. And we've designed our schedule to reduce the amount of friction. We really try not to complicate things, whether that's with our household or with our kids or with the business. We've really strived to have as many options as possible. So my advice out there to anyone listening is to be intentional. Sit down tomorrow morning and write down what you want out of your life and career. What do you want to do? Do you want to write a book? Do you want to launch a podcast? Do you want to have a side hustle? Do you want to become an enterprise account executive? Do you want to become a VP of sales? Start writing down your goals because writing those things down will make them happen. And something else about me is if you were to go through the notes on my phone, not only would you see all the many ideas I have for future podcast episodes and future LinkedIn posts and future newsletter editions, but you would also see goals dating back 10 years that I wrote down. And what's been amazing is to go back and look at things that I wrote down 10 years ago and see that I've actually achieved the things that I wrote down that I wanted to achieve. And I'll write very specific things, like very specific W-2s I want to earn, very specific milestones I want to hit. And it's crazy to go back and look. Long before I launched this podcast, one of my goals was to launch a podcast. And it took a really long time to finally do it, but I did do it. And I owe a lot of that to spending time being intentional and writing down what I want to get out of my life and career. So thanks so much for tuning in and have a fantastic weekend.